Hi guys, and welcome back to another video. This time looking at Phantasy Star Universe. So first PSU video on the channel really, apart from briefly featuring it in some other videos. So today what we're going to do is we're going to basically do a beginner's primer to PSU. So as you might be aware, the original PSO has quite a lot of private servers that you can access so you can still play the game online now. What some people don't know is that also applies to PSU as well. So there might be some people out there who want to try PSU for the first time and maybe never got around to it. Or people who maybe only played it offline originally who want to try the online part of the game. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to go through the process of how you actually start out with PSU. And I'm just going to give you like a beginner's overview to how to get started. So first of all, a couple of reasons why you might want to play PSU so long after release. So PSU made quite a strange decision when it released in that the offline part of the game and the online part of the game were completely separated, and they were also completely different. What I mean by that is, so your character offline would not carry over online. All of the stats for all the items were completely different. The drop charts were different. It was like another game basically. And if you only played the offline part of the game, you missed out on quite a lot of things that were online only. So because of that, you might want to go back and check out what you missed if you only played it offline originally. Now, bear in mind that PSU was out on the PS2 and the Xbox. I think it was Xbox 360. There might have been a lot of people who didn't play it online originally. So that's one reason. Other reason is that when PSU launched, it got quite panned by the press, to be honest. It didn't get good reviews at all. It was always seen as like a shadow of PSO really, and it got a lot of negative reviews, a lot of negativity from the community when it released as well. Over time, I think it's actually looking back on it now, it is actually better than we thought it was at the time. So there might be people who want to give it a chance now and just see why it got the reviews it did, to see if it is worth the bad reviews or if it is actually a good game. That's another reason why you might want to check it as well. It's also kind of an interesting middle point between PSO and the more modern games like PSO2 and PSO2 NGS. So you can kind of see where NGS got and PSO2 got some of its ideas from. But you can also see some of the elements left over from PSO as well. So it's quite interesting seeing that middle ground and where Sega were trying to obviously experiment a little bit. So what we'll do is we'll jump into it first of all. So the server I'm playing on here is a server called Clementine. I'll leave all the links in the description of how to actually access the server. Essentially what you do is you just go to the wiki, download the client from there, and you sign up for an account. And once you're all signed up, you can just log into the game, and then it's as simple as that. So I'll leave all those details in the description for you. But next thing we'll do is once you've loaded up PSU and you've gone into the network mode, what you'll find is you need to make a new character. So we'll do that very, very quickly. I've already got one character there, but I want to show you the process of doing it. So we'll go to create. And you can see, so it's kind of similar to the PSO character creation, but there's a little bit more in depth. So as with PSO, you do have your races in the game. So you've got humans, Newmans, castes, and we have a new race called beasts. So, but what you'll realize is that they're not strictly confined to one class. So in PSO, if you had a female Newman, they were either a force or a hunter. You couldn't have a ranger one. That was in PSO. So in PSU, it's a lot more open. You can basically have any race can be any class, and it even includes things like, you know, castes can now be forces if they want to. Not very good at it, but they can do it. Newmans can do melee. Again, they're not brilliant at it, but they can do it. So you have that flexibility. So as usual, you can choose male, female, and different races. So for the purposes of this video, we'll make a beast female, just so we can show that off. So now what you get in PSU is a character creation that's a lot more similar to PSO2. It's obviously a lot more pared back because it is a much, much older game. But you can see here that there is this similarity with the character creation. It's a lot different to the very, very basic setup of PSO, where you basically just chose a face template, a body template, and your proportions. In this, you can see we've got different face types. We've got different eyes. We've got different eyebrows. So what you can see is it's more similar to what we're used to now with PSO2 and NGS. So we've got different lashes, different ear styles, and different hairs. You can also rotate the character as well, just to see it better. So you can see there is a definite step up in the character creation between PSO and PSU. It's a lot more in depth. Of course there's an afro, because of course there is. So we'll go with this. And you can also choose the, what they call the bodysuit, which is essentially what you wear when your character doesn't have clothes. You choose the skin colour. Again, there's quite a wide variety. And for proportions, now it's a lot more in depth, so you can choose the basic height, so you can have, there's a lot more variance to it as well, so you can have an absolutely tiny character or a really, really tall one. But what you can also see is underneath this, we've also got a little graph. And this graph here, what it does is it basically shows you how you can adjust the proportions. So I move this around, you can see it actually adjusts the... It's quite easy if I show you like this, actually. What I'll do is I'll remove my camera as well, just so you can see this a bit better. So if I move this around now, you can see it actually adjusts the actual proportions. So by going across here, we're adjusting like how the body is distributed between the shoulders and the hips. If we go up and down, this affects kind of the overall waist size, really. We'll just go with that for now. But next up, we could choose the clothes the character wears. So this was a new thing introduced in PSU as well. So again, in PSO, you just had some base outfits that you chose between different palette colors. In PSU, we actually have actual outfits. So you can see and change the jacket, a few different colors of this one. Or we can have a totally different jacket, a few different colors, or a totally different jacket again, a few different colors. And there are more clothes you can buy in the game as well. Same for all the other clothes, so we've got a variety of different pants. And same for the shoes as well, so we've got these boots, or what are more like sneakers, or some more like traditional shoes. But I'll go with that. Next up we have voices. So again, in PSO you don't have voices in your character. So this was a new thing they brought in PSU. So again, it's this is a lot of things you expect now in NGS and in PSO2, and PSU is actually the first game to introduce a lot of this. Unfortunately, a lot of the voices are very, very similar, and on Clementine, the voices seem to only be the Japanese voices. That'll do. You can also adjust the pitch of the voice as well, which again should be familiar to you if you've played PSO2. But next up, we have a name. And you can adjust that as you want to. And the other thing I should note as well is if you go back to things like the hair colour, you do also get this thing, it's for the eyes as well, where underneath it you actually have a palette where you can adjust the colours. So while I'm highlighting the eyes, I can hold shift and use the arrow keys and I can change the colour of the eyes. I'll go with that. And the same for the hair colour. Didn't see we can change this as well. Let's go with that. So make our character. And when you first spawn in, this is where you'll spawn. But this is Clyez City, and it's on what's called the Guardians Colony. And this is kind of your home hub in PSU. So with the Guardians colony, this will have a lot of the areas that you'll go to frequently. So the way that they did PSU was you have a central hub, which is this Guardians colony, and then you have several planets that you can go to as well, which all have their own hubs as well. And then each of the hubs are connected to smaller hubs scattered around the map that you go to by completing missions. So, for example, from the Guardians colony, you can go on a mission, and that will take you to a smaller sub-lobby on the Guardians colony. It was quite an interesting idea at the time, but the only problem with it was when you first started, you couldn't really go anywhere, so you had to go through a load of missions to be able to actually unlock the other areas, which was a little bit annoying at the time. Say another thing we introduced in PSU is camera control, so we can now fully rotate the camera around the character. Again, in PSO, that wasn't a thing. So, next thing we're going to do is, so we'll go up to the further floors. So, on this floor, we've got all our shops, just as you'd expect. On the third floor, we have this where you buy clothes, parts for casts, and it's also, there's a salon there as well where you can adjust your character after creation. Again, something that was used later on in PSO2. But the fourth floor is the important floor, really. There is a fifth floor as well, but that's mainly for story quests. So on the fourth floor, we have what's called the PPT Spaceport, and scattered around it, there are these exits. So there's one there. If we look over there, there's another one right over there. There's a few of them scattered around, and each of these take you to different areas. So, when you first spawn in PSU, you'll be level 1, you have really basic equipment, you won't be able to really fight a great deal. So, the first place you probably want to try leveling is a place called Linear Line, which is connected to the Guardians colony. So, to access Linear Line, you just want to go over here. Now, what you'll notice is outside each of the entrances and in some of the fields as well, you'll get these things, which are called Photon Cubes, Photon Charges. So in PSU was the first game to introduce Photon Arts, which I'll go into in a little bit. But it's also the first game to use a kind of ammo system. So in later games, obviously, we have PP that manages a lot of our Photon Arts in NGS and PSO2. With PSU, the way you recharge that energy is by either using a Photon Sphere item or by charging a Photon Cube. So it does mean you can actually run out of the ability to use Photon Arts or shoot. I don't think it was a particularly popular system really, so it was never used again. But what you want to do is, when you're a new character, just start out with Linear Line. What you'll do is, when you go in here, you'll come to the mission counter. So this is the equivalent of like the quest counter in PSO. And you select a mission, and we've got a couple of options here. And the one I'd start with is Unsafe Passage. And you can see we've got various different ranks. So the way PSU works for difficulty is it uses a rank system. Whereas in PSO, you have obviously your different difficulties like normal, hard, very hard, and ultimate. In PSU, it's a little bit different. So each of the quests will have different difficulty levels. So we've got C, B, A, S, S2, S3, S4. And what you'll notice is if you look on the right hand side, you'll see it tells you what level the enemies are and what requirement you need to do this. So for Unsafe Passage C, there are no prerequisites because it's pretty much the first quest in the game. And the creatures are level 1+, so it's ideal for brand new characters. And if we go up to say Unsafe Passage A, for that you need to be level 40+, and the creatures are level 70+. And it goes right up to S4, which is you have to be 160+, and the creatures are 190+. So that's how it works in PSU. There's not a specific difficulty level. You basically pick it per mission. So we'll start with Unsafe Passage C. We'll put a password on, which in PSU is just a 4-digit number, as opposed to a full password in PSO. And you can also do things like you can adjust the item distribution. So as default, it's set to give finder, which means that anyone who picks an item up gets it, which is more like PSO. But you can also see that we can change it to, for example, set random for rare items, and you can adjust this for rares and non-rares. So for rare items, you could set it to set random, so every time a rare drops, it will give it to a random player in the party. Or set in order means that every time a rare drops, it picks the next player. So what it'll do is, if you have 4 players, it will organize you into a list, and it will distribute a rare to each player in turn. And then once everyone's had a rare, it will jumble the list again, and basically recalculate it, and then do it again. So you might be, for example, the 3rd player in the list the first time. And that means the 3rd rare that drops you'll get. But then in the next rotation, you might be first. So it doesn't matter for me because I'm soloing. But then you go on start mission. And what will happen is we'll load in. So this is the actual quest in PSU. So a couple of things to note about how the combat in PSU works and how the quests work. So first thing you need to know is these crystals here. These are basically almost like checkpoints. What these are is if you go outside of the quest for any reason, or if you die and come back, for example, you can use these to teleport between different blocks. So, but you need to activate them. So whenever you see one of these, you just want to interact with it, and it'll light up. And you can see here now it lets me go back to the departure lobby if I want to. Now, if I then go to block 2 and activate the crystal there, I could then teleport between these 2 crystals. But next thing you need to know, so PSU, compared to PSO, the combat is quite a lot more developed, and you can see where they've spent a bit of time working on it. So I'll keep my camera off for now because a lot of the information's on the bottom right down here. What will happen is when you load in, your character will be assigned a specific class. So if I go to my details, you can see that I'm a beast hunter. So for beasts, it will automatically make you a hunter to begin with. There is a way to change that, which is to go to the 5th floor of the Guardian's Colony, and you can just change it there. So if you wanted to be, for example, a beast force, you could go to the Guardian's Colony and switch over. Good thing about this server as well, it actually shows you how active it is. So at the moment there are 70 people online, which for PSU is not bad really. It also shows you your base stats there as well, which are very, very similar to PSO. So we've got obviously HP, how much life you've got. We've got ATP, which is still your attack power. We still get ATA, which is accuracy. We now have TP. So TP now is what MST used to be in PSO, so it's how strong your techniques are. Then we've got DFP, which is your defense from physical attacks. EVP is still your evade. MST is basically now like technique defense. So instead of having elemental defenses like you had in PSO, you now have just a basic MST that protects you against tech damage in general. Then we have stamina as well. And offhand, I actually can't remember what stamina is for. Someone have to enlighten me on that because I can't remember. It's been so long since I played PSU. Seriously, I honestly can't remember what that's for. So next thing you need to know is about the weapon palette. So I'm using an Xbox controller, and with the standard settings, if you hold circle, you'll bring up this menu here. You can see. And while you're holding circle, if you press up and down, you can cycle through this palette, which again might look familiar if you've played PSO2 or NGS. This is kind of your weapon palette. So, and all you do is if you want to change weapon, we've got some knuckles here we can switch to. All you do is you just highlight it and then release circle. And I switch to the knuckles. And then if I want to go back to the saber, again hold circle, go to the saber and release. Now what you might also notice is when you open the palette, there's also a sub menu on the left hand side. And this is your item palette. So this is where you would put, so this one here. So you can see this is where you put like your healing items, things like that. So if I wanted to use a monomate, the way I would do it is I would hold circle, then press left to go to the palette, and then release circle. Now at the minute I don't need to use one, but that's how you use the sub palette as well. Then you just press right if you want to go back to your weapons. Don't just release circle while you're highlighting something here because it will use it. So you want to, if you for example went into this and wanted to use a monomate but then decided against it, just go back to your weapon palette and then release. So the other thing that you keen-eyed people might notice is that we actually have 2 weapons equipped at the minute. So we have a saber and a handgun. Now, the way it works in PSU is weapons are either one-handed or two-handed. So a saber is one-handed and a handgun is one-handed. And handguns always go in your left hand and melee weapons always go in your right hand. So if you do that, you can actually have a melee and a ranged weapon at the same time. The way you actually use them is, by default, your right weapon will be highlighted, which is a saber. While it's highlighted, you just hit square, or well, we'll go on Xbox notation, so you press X. And by doing these attacks, you can see we do a combo. And like PSU, we have a system where by timing your attacks, you get more damage. So when you get that golden effect around your character, that's to signify that you've done what's called a just attack, which is a timed attack that does a bit more damage. Again, just by pressing X, got our basic combo. In PSU, you can spam the attacks, which you couldn't in PSO, but you won't get the just attack bonus. So it is worth timing your attacks. So now, if we press Y, we can use our Photon Art. So PSU introduced Photon Arts, and these are skills that you can use to do various things in combat. So by default, with the saber, we have what's called Rising Strike. So if I press that, see we do those like 2 hits. And what you'll notice is next to the saber, we have this gauge here, and this is our energy gauge. It does restore very slowly over time, as you can see. But every time we use a Photon Art, it will actually deplete some of that gauge. So you can see it's full again now. But if we use Rising Strike, it drops down to 90, and then it'll slowly start restoring again. If I run out of that gauge, I can't use Rising Strike. I'll have to wait for it to restore again, or use an item to restore it. So to access the handgun, what you do is, if you hold right bumper, you can see that the icon changes to the gun. While we're holding down right bumper, then if I press square to attack or X to attack and keep shooting, and you can see again we've got that ammo system as well, and the ammo again will restore over time. And then by releasing right bumper, go back to the saber, just to show you that in combat. So we've got a few enemies here, so we'll start out with the saber. We'll use Rising Strike. We've got our first level up. So you will level quite fast early on. Now what you can see there is it says on the right of the screen, Rising Strike level 2. So in PSU, they introduced a system where your Photon Arts can be leveled up. And by leveling them up, they do more damage. If they're attack Photon Arts, might get more accuracy. At certain levels, they'll also gain extra parts to the Photon Art as well. So at level 11, it will gain an extra part. So there is an incentive to use your Photon Arts. And for things like buffs, that'll make them last longer or have a bigger effect. So again, we'll do a couple more rooms, just to show you a bit more of this quest. So again, if we switch to the gun, what you can also do as well is, while you're attacking, if you hold left bumper, you can actually strafe. So I'm holding right bumper to keep my gun out and left bumper to strafe there. What that allows you to do is basically rotate around enemies, or like sidestep around them. Particularly for guns, it's quite useful because it allows you to reposition quite easily, and it also keeps your lock on pointing forward. If I release strafe and try shooting with my gun, if I turn left, I'll shoot to the left, which is not really that useful. So quite often what you'll do is you will hold left bumper. You also lock onto enemies by doing it as well if you do it near an enemy. So you can see now, while I'm locked on, I'm actually rotating around this guy. If I do it while I'm not locked on, I can just strafe, really. Again, we'll lock on and go for this guy. We'll shoot this one. We're getting plenty of levels. But it is worth picking up a lot of the item drops as well, because a lot of them are used for synthesizing, which I'll briefly go into in this video. If there is more interest in PSU videos, I will maybe do some more. I'm just aware that it's quite a niche game. So you can see there that second hit of Rising Strike actually launches enemies. It's a very, very easy quest, this one, because it is designed for brand new players. It's quite interesting going back and playing PSU because it did get really, really panned at the time. I honestly feel like it's actually nowhere near as bad as people make it out to be. In fact, going back, I think it holds up better than PSO to some extent because it kind of feels like a halfway house between PSO and PSO2 in terms of some of the systems that they brought in later games. But I can understand why it wasn't liked at the time as well because it was such a departure from PSO. So we've activated our crystal in the second block. So you can see now I can, if I want to, go back to block 1. That brings me back to the start again. And if I go back to there, I can go back to block 2. So it's a way of basically fast traveling between the different blocks. Just always remember to activate those. So what I'll do is I'll quickly finish through this quest and I'll show you what happens once we get to the end. So we are getting a few levels as well, which is good. Now there is no real way of blocking damage in PSU. You basically just have to try and make sure your character's not in the way. Yeah, it looks like there is a door north, actually. It looks like we can't access it from here. Now, there are some piles of rubble that you can actually get rid of if you use your goggles. By using these and putting them on, if you look at different things, sometimes you'll get items that you can interact with and you can destroy. You can't do it for those ones. So we'll just keep going and we'll just see what happens once we get to the end of the quest. It's quite a short quest overall, this one. But I would really recommend doing this one first, just to get your first few levels. After that, you can spread out a lot more. It's like the most obvious trap ever. So you can see the damage difference there. So if I use normal attacks, I'm doing around about 50 damage. But if I use just attacks, I get about 75. So it is quite a big damage difference if you do use the just attacks. So do try and use them if you can. So these are keys, so these unlock laser fences basically. What it'll do is it'll show you at the top here if you've got enough keys. So this show me only one key, which I've got. Occasionally you'll need more than one key, and it'll show you the other ones grayed out if you still need more. So you can see here, so we've got a door here that's locked. By interacting it, we deactivate the lock. So I think we're getting towards the end now. It's worth noting as well that the just attack system also works for Photon Arts as well. So just try and make sure that you're timing those as well. So we've got block 3. I believe this is the last block. Again, we've got another crystal. use our gun just to weaken them up a little bit before we go in with the sword. So it's quite a cool system that they allow you to alternate between these left and right hand weapons. Just to show you as well, if you do switch to a two-hand weapon. So again, that Photon Art there might look familiar to you if you've played PSO2 or NGS. So I think PSU definitely paved the way for certain aspects of PSO2. So it looks like we need to go over here first. So to use a PSO terminology, I would say that this quest is probably the equivalent of running forest in PSO. You should note as well that there are multiple different Photon Arts for each weapon as well. And you unlock those by, you can either buy some of them. There are some you unlock through exchange shops and things like that, but usually you buy them. So we've got another switch. So with Knuckles, if I hold left bumper while I've got Knuckles equipped, I can still do the strafe. It's just obviously there's no other weapon to switch to. If I hold right bumper just does nothing. That was quite nice. Another thing you may have noticed if you play PSO more is that we don't have a mag. So there is a system in PSU that works similar to that, which I'll cover briefly in this video, but I'll probably need to do a full video on it, to be honest, at a later date. So that there is a way for a kind of mag to help you, but there is a lot more work involved. So we'll finish that run. So at the end of the quest, we get a few boxes to open. We've got a few drops, so we've actually got this little armor drop. We also get these things called boards. So these are synthesis boards, and these are used to actually make items. A few weapons, and there's also some grinders as well. So you do the results. So you get Mazetta, and you also get mission points, and mission points are used to level your class. So your class actually has its own level as well, which again is similar to other Phantasy Star games. And what your class also shows as well is it shows you what weapons you're allowed to equip and up to what rank. So there is quite a lot more to PSU in that aspect. So this is the first of those sub-lobbies that I mentioned earlier. So by completing that quest, we've got access to this little sub-lobby. Most of the sub-lobbies will just have a vendor in them. There'll be a photon cube that you can recharge at. And then typically they'll have another door. So if I go over here, this would go to Aurora Viewing Plaza, and this would be another quest counter. So then I would do another quest, which would take me to Aurora Viewing Plaza once I've done it. That's an overview of that. So the next thing I want to cover is a sort of basic overview of the classes. So if we go to our status menu here, you can see if we go on our types list, we've got different classes. So there's quite a few classes in PSU. We have basic classes, which are Hunter, Ranger, and Force. And as you can see, for example, for Hunter, we can equip to B rank for swords, knuckles, spears. twin blades, twin daggers, sabers, daggers, claws, handguns. I think they're called Shadoogs, I think, and C-rank machine guns. And you see each class has different weapon distributions. We then get more advanced classes, which are combinations, basically. So by leveling basic classes to certain levels, you unlock the requirements for these. So, for example, to become a fire gunner, which is kind of a cross between a hunter and a ranger, you need to get hunter level 7 and ranger level 5. And that will allow you to use A rank and S rank weapons. There are also specialist classes as well, such as Fire Master, Gun Master, and these require you to level some of the advanced classes to certain levels. But there is quite a lot more to it. So what you'll probably find is that you will change class quite often to level them up, so you get the requirements to go to other classes. Now the final thing I want to cover in this video is about your room. So if you go to any of these orange pyramids and go to your room, you can also go to any of the main hub cities here as well. So Clyez City is the one I showed you earlier, but there are also main hub cities on each of the planets. So Haltez City is the hub city of Parum, Otoku City is the main hub of New Days, and Dagora City is the main hub of Mortube, which are the other planets you can go to. So for now, we'll just go to our room. There is a lot more to some aspects of PSU in regards to the combat, so your gear will have elemental defenses and things like that, but I'll cover those in other videos. This is just the absolute basics. So in your room, what you've got is you've got a few little parts on the floor where you can put decorations. Think of this as like a much more restricted version of room decoration in PSO2. There's a room here where you can change, so if you want to change outfits, you can change in there. And then we have this guy, which is our partner machine. So this is kind of the mag system of PSU. Now, to begin with, all this guy does so give it a name, and then basically all you can do to begin with is it acts as a storage for you, so you can store items in there. You can talk to it, you can give it items which level it up, and by leveling up you basically increase its effectiveness at making certain items. Once it gets to a certain level, I think it's 100 or so, it will then become available to actually help you as a partner in battle. So the main use of them though is for synthesizing. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but synthesizing is essentially a way of making items. So to go synthesize, you basically give the mag a board. So if we give it this brand line board that we found, and then go synthesize, it tells you what you need for it. So there's one item I don't have. This would be a type of photon, which would determine the element of the armor that we're making. Then we'd need 2 wenceline and 4 nanosilica. Once we've got those, it tells us we can make up to 5 attempts from this board, and it's a 70% success rate. And by leveling up certain stats on our mag, we can affect the success rate of that synthesis. So that's all I'm going to cover on synthesis for now, just because it is quite complex. I might do another separate video on that. For the meantime though, I think I'll probably end this one there. That's a really basic overview of how PSU works and how to get connected to it. If there's anything particularly you want me to cover for PSU, I'm more than happy to. Just leave them in the comments and I'll try and cover whatever I can. But for the meantime, I hope that was relatively useful for anyone at least wanting to get connected to the servers and understand the absolute basics of the game. Any questions, leave them below and I will try and answer what I can. But for the meantime, I'll see you guys in the next video.